Gathered on stage tonight are eminent people who have worked hard to make a difference in our world. This evening you'll be hearing from scientists, entrepreneurs, artists, athletes, and historical figures.
Hi, I'm Preston. Our eminent guests have been preparing for this evening for quite a long time. They have all prepared a speech and have made a project and food. You will get to play a guessing game. On your program, there are the names of the 4th grade students who participate in the Key program. After each student reads their bio riddle, write the name of the eminent person you think they are pretending to be. We will give the answers later, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Amanda Robinson.
I was the first American woman to go into space. I was born on May 26, 1951 in Los Angeles, California. I have a younger sister, Karen. When I was younger, I enjoyed street games. I was always one of the first to get picked for sports. I played tennis and even got a tennis scholarship. I played tennis for a while, but I changed my mind. I didn't think I was good at it, so I quit. I attended private Westlake School for Girls and later went to Swarthmore College. In college, I took a lot of science and Shakespeare classes. When I was older, I taught kids about science and math. I was a physics professor and businesswoman too. I also wrote books on science. I was an astronaut at NASA. I answered an audition call from NASA in the Stanford newspaper. I was an ideal candidate because I had a strong science background and athletic ability. There were 1,251 women who applied for the astronaut applications, and I got accepted along with 5 other people. In 1979, I completed the training for the flight. My first assignments were being part of the Mission Control Center crew and serving as a capsule communicator responsible for the radio messages from the shuttle to the Earth. I also took part in the design team for the shuttle's 50-foot robotic arm, a device used for dangerous spacewalks or difficult spacewalks. On June 18, 1983, I became the first American woman to go into space. Who am I?
Leone.
I hid in a hen house for 5 hours to see how chickens laid their eggs. I was born in London, England on April 3rd, 1934. While my father was fighting in World War II, my sister, mother, and I were living with my grandmother in a Grand Manor house. I moved to France when I was 5 years old. When I was 7, I read the story of Dr. Dolittle. It inspired me to study animals and go to Africa. When I was young, I started a club called the Alligator Club. My club went on nature walks, camped out in my garden, and rewrote down what we observed animals doing. I went to high school in England studying history and biology. After I finished high school, I worked as a secretary at Oxford University. While I was working, I received a letter from one of my old school friends, Chloe. Chloe wanted me to visit her in Kenya, Africa. I was on board right when I got the letter, but first I had to earn money. I moved back to France where I worked as a waitress in an old-fashioned hotel. After 4 months of waiting tables, I finally had enough money to go on a trip to Africa. I was 23 years old when I first sailed to the continent of Africa. After 2 months of being in Kenya, I met the man who would start my long life career with animals. A friend of mine introduced me to Dr. Louis Leakey, a famous anthropologist and paleontologist who was working in Kenya. In 1957, before I began working for Dr. Leakey at the museum, he and his wife Mary took me on a trip to the famous Oldbury Gorge. I returned to England after the trip to Oldbury Gorge. I started to study chimpanzees and observe them in the London Zoo. After spending so much time with chimps, I was concerned about how chimps were treated in zoos and what their lives were like in cages. I felt that no animals should be forced to live in a cramped, confined space. After several months studying chimpanzees, I got a letter from Dr. Leakey. He wanted me to fund my studying on chimpanzees. My mother and I went to Kenya, Africa, so I can study chimpanzees.
When I got back to Kenya, I began to work at Gome National Park. The next day, I got up at 5 a.m. to go find some chimpanzees. Every day, I went to the same spot, but there were no chimps. Until one day, while I was sitting in the tall rock grass, three chimpanzees started to walk up to me. It was the happiest day of my life. When I stayed and studied the three chimps until they left. After 3 months, when my mom and I were staying in Kenya, we became very ill. We found out that we had an illness called malaria. The fevers ran up to 105 degrees. We could not eat and had terrible chills. After 10 days, we were feeling better. In 1966, I married Hugo Van Leeuwen and had one son. In 1974, we divorced. A year later, I married Derek Bryson. Unfortunately, Derek died from cancer in 1980. I lived in Africa for 30 years. Can you guess who I am?
Sean O'Donnell.
Did you know that I made my own printing press for a news business? But that's not what I was famous for. I was born in 1867 in Millville, Indiana. I have 3 brothers, 1 sister, a mom, and a dad who's a bishop. There was a toy that I played with called the bat, and when you spin the rubber band inside and let it go, it flies. Once while playing hockey, I got hit in the face by a hockey stick and didn't only lose my teeth, but I lost my courage. I skipped college and never married. I started a news business with one of my brothers and then started to fix bikes. Later, I started to get interested in things that fly, so I started building gliders and tried to build an airplane. Some of my special interests are mechanics, biking, fixing bikes, inventing, reading, and aerodynamics. A lot of people think I invented a vehicle, but I only made it so you can maneuver it and so its engine. When I made the vehicle in 1903, my brother and I brought to Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. I flew in the vehicle for 59 seconds. In 1912, I died of typhoid fever, and also in 1955, 43 years after I died, I was elected into the Hall of Fame. Do you know who I am?
Lauren Mock.
I was one of the most popular members of the royal family. I wasn't born into the royal family, though. I was born on July 1st, 1962 in Sandringham Estate. My parents, Edward and Frances, were the Lord and Lady of Althorpe, so I was born into a family with a noble bloodline. I was brought up at Sandringham Estates, where I played with some of the Queen's children, and later at my family's estate, Althorpe. Following my grandfather's death, my father became the 8th Earl of Spencer. In 1977, I became reacquainted with the older brother of some of my childhood friends at a pheasant hunt in Althorpe. His name was Charles, and he was 13 years older than me. We became engaged February 3rd, 1981 at Balmoral Castle. I was only 19 years old. Our lavish wedding at St. Paul's Cathedral was shown on television all around the world. It was thought to be the fairy tale wedding of the century. Charles and I later had 2 children. My first child was William Arthur Philip Lewis. 2 years later, my second son, Henry Charles Abbott David, was born. I was a loving mother, but as a member of the royal family, I wanted to contribute, so I became actively involved with charities in England and eventually with my popularity all around the world. I also tried to bring attention to many unpopular causes such as homelessness, leprosy, and AIDS. However, fairy tales don't always have good endings. In July 1996, my marriage to Charles ended. After my divorce, I focused on my children and charities that I so dearly loved and worked with the International Red Cross to bring attention to landmines. I auctioned 79 dresses for millions of dollars as suggested by my son William to help support the charities that I so dearly loved. Although I died on August 31st, 1997 in a car crash in Paris, France, I am remembered for my love of fashion, my work of humanitarian causes, and my voice that I truly loved. Can you guess who I am?
Preston Forjay.
Although my job is to make games, I barely play them. I was born in Sonobe, Japan on November 16, 1952. I lived in a rural village and was surrounded by nature. When I was young, I made my own toys because my family couldn't afford to buy any. A few times a year, we took a special trip to go watch animated films in theaters. Watching these films inspired me to become an artist. I also like to explore the outdoors. One day, I found a cave which inspired a game that became really famous. In 1970, I went to Kanazawa College of Art and got a degree in Industrial Arts and Crafts. After college, I made a portfolio with all the art I made in college. I went to a famous gaming company to apply for a job designing games. They said they needed engineers more than artists, but they agreed to a meeting. I brought my portfolio and they loved it. The head of the company hired me himself. I started out as an assistant, but as I progressed, I eventually became a game designer for the company. The first games I helped create were called Radar Scope and Sheriff. The first game I created from my own designs was Donkey Kong. All the games I have created are based off of what has happened in my life. For example, the game Pikmin is based off of the time I saw ants carrying a leaf across my patio. My most famous game franchises are Super Mario Bros. And Wii Fit. I still create video games, but I'm planning on retiring soon. Who am I?
When I was only 15 years old, I made enough money hunting game with a rifle to pay the $200 mortgage on my family's home. I was born August 13, 1860 in Drake Country, Ohio. My birth name was Phoebe Ann Moses. I had 7 sisters and 1 brother. When I was 6 years old, my father died and my mom remarried. My mom couldn't take care of all 9 of us, so I had to live and work at the orphanages with Miss Eddington. I had to help take care of the kids, and in return, she taught me to read, write, and sew. When I was 8, I taught myself to shoot a gun. At the age of 15, I beat Frank Butler in a shooting competition. I married Frank at the age of 16. We continued to shoot together. We became one act at Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. Some of the things I did in the show were shooting glass balls thrown in the air, shooting holes in playing cards, and shooting the end off a cigarette held in Frank's mouth. I could even use a mirror to look behind me and shoot at a target. I had the nickname of Little Sure Shot because I was only 5 feet tall. Frank didn't mind that I was the one in the spotlight, and so he became my manager and assistant. We traveled all over the United States, and we even went over to France and England. We performed in front of Queen Victoria. We left the Buffalo Bill show after 16 years. We continued to take part in other shows. I also did some acting. In 1913, we moved to Cambridge, Maryland. We adopted a dog named Dave. I would shoot an apple off his head as part of our show. In 1922, Frank and I were in a bad car accident, but I was able to perform again. In addition to performing, I also taught other women how to shoot a gun. On November 3rd, 1926, in Greenville, Ohio, I died. Who am I?
Riley Dolliver.
I am a #1 best-selling author of all time. I have written a 7-book series that also became bestsellers. I was born on July 31st, 1965 in Yate, United Kingdom, England. I traveled to Forest of Dean in Paris, but later I moved to Portugal and started teaching foreign language. I love to write and love coffee. My schools were Tutshall Primary and Leading Comprehensive School. For college, I went to the University of Exeter. I wrote longhand and was a secretary, but I didn't like to be a secretary. Later, I started writing on a train, but as I continued, I wrote in Nicholason's Cafe while Jessica napped in her stroller. The books are about a boy trying to find his true identity. He goes to a school for 7 years, 1 book for each year. When he started out, the boy is 11 years old and is an orphan. He found out he was a wizard and goes to a wizarding school. Later, I got married to Dr. Neil Murray, and he had 2 more kids, David and Mackenzie. It took 5 years to write the first book of my series. I got a Medal of Achievement for my series, and there were 7 books and 8 movies. Who am I?
of school and began being a printer because I preferred mechanics to school. I was born in Dayton, Ohio, 1871, on 7 Hawthorne Street. I have 3 brothers and 1 sister. I love to build toys. I played with a toy called the bat. It was built with cork, bamboo, and paper. Its engine is a rubber band. I was interested in mechanics, biking, flying, inventing, and gliding. I became interested in gliding because of Otto Lilienthal, who was the first person to fly the glider. My accomplishments are in the National Aviation Hall of Fame. I invented a type of airplane, wrote a book, and made 3 gliders in 2 years. I flew a glider that broke the record for longest flight. It was a 12-second flight in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, in the year of 1903. I died on January 30th in 1948 when I was 76 years old. Who am I?
Leah Harvester.
My mom was trying to sell our horse. To prove our horse was child safe, my mom put me on the horse's back right then and there. I was only 2 years old. That was when I rode for the first time. I was born in Benton Harbor, Michigan on July 4th, 1963. I grew up on a horse farm in Eau Claire, Michigan. I was winning horse shows at the young age of 5. My mom was a prize-winning show rider. My dad was a school teacher teaching art. I would ride bareback every morning before school, as well as the second I got home from school. I enjoyed being around horses, but especially riding and racing them. I quit high school my senior year to focus on my jockey career. One of my jobs included being a trick rider. However, I quit this because it was too entailed from being away, which I did not like. My other jobs were being a horse trainer as well as a jockey. I started my racing career at age 15, when a nice woman let me ride her horse around the track a couple times a week. Just 5 months later, thanks to that woman, I was winning horse shows. Races. I have won more than 3,500 races thanks to the 75 different horses I rode during these races. I have won approximately $81 million. I was the most successful female jockey in racing history. To this day, I remain the most successful. I was also the first woman jockey to win the Belmont Stakes Triple Crown race. I was the first woman included in the Racing Hall of Fame in 2000. I had one life-threatening accident in the Saratoga race. I was bucked off my horse and couldn't get up due to an ankle injury. That is when a horse came charging at me. The jockey riding the horse was unable to steer the horse away due to the excessive speed the horse was traveling at. I broke my fibula and shattered my tibia. I was in the hospital for 3 months and had an 8-month recovery afterwards. It was determined that the riding vest that I was wearing actually saved my life. I married Matthew Musicara in 1995. In 1995, I also retired from racing. I suffered 2 major injuries in 1993 and 1995, in addition to numerous other less serious injuries. My love for speed diminished and I just didn't want to ride anymore. I divorced Matthew and remarried a man named Jay Hovney in 2002. At that time, I returned to racing for a short time. But even though I was healed physically, emotionally I was scarred for life. I later became a spokesperson for PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Who am I?
Bianca Fonseca.
When I was 10, I published my first book. I was born May 27, 1907 in Springdale, Pennsylvania.
I grew up on a farm. I spent most of my life with my dog Candy and my mom. And I'm a lover of nature. Also, I love books and the ocean. I went to Pennsylvania College for Women to become a writer. Then became fascinated with science and decided to major in biology. I got a master's degree in zoology from Johns Hopkins University. I actually got a scholarship to go there. I spent my summers at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution in Massachusetts as part of my studies doing research. I am a quiet author and a marine biologist. Some of my most popular books that won awards are Silent Spring, A Clean Sea, and The Sea Around Us. The Sea Around Us won many awards and became a bestseller in the United States. It also was made into a movie and won an Academy Award. Sadly, in 1935, my dad and sister suddenly died, and I had to start supporting my mother and two nephews. I wrote an article called Undersea in 1937. It was published in the famous literary magazine called Atlantic Monthly. Women usually didn't study science in the 1920s, but I did. I loved science and writing so much I did it my entire life. I was one of the first 2 women announced to join the crew of the Albatross 3, a research ship, and helped the government with research on tides and currents. My book, Edge of the Sea, was published in 1955. It also was a bestseller. Another of my books, Silent Spring, was very different from all the earlier books. I knew that my argument against using pesticides such as DDT would create a lot of debate. President John F. Kennedy read my book. He ordered his Science Advisory Committee to create a special panel. This panel was to investigate the effects of pesticides on the environment. I died of breast cancer on April 14, 1964 in Silver Spring, Maryland. 2 years after I died, Silent Spring was published. I believe those who dwell among the beauties and mysteries of the earth are never alone or weary of life. Can you guess who I am?
Natalie Howard.
Can you imagine being deprived of education just because you are a girl? I was born in Pakistan on July 12, 1997. I lived with my mom, dad, and my 2 brothers. When I was a little girl, my father took me to press club meetings. I attended college, my father's school. The school was a high school and college for girls. The name of the school was Kushtan High School and College. I gave speeches and spoke out when I was not supposed to. I talked about the importance of education for girls. In Pakistan, girls cannot really do anything. All they usually do is cook, clean, and take care of the children. Some women have a job like a doctor. In Pakistan, men are the dominant gender. I want women and girls to get the same education rates as men and boys. When I was 15, I was shot by a .45 Colt pistol. The bullet went into my eye socket and out my shoulder. I had to go on a plane to England. They rushed me into a hospital and stabilized me. They prepped me for surgery. The doctors found bone fragments in my brain. They put a metal plate to remake the part of my skull that was damaged. When I started therapy, I could not catch a ball, but I persevered and kept trying. A little later, I could catch and throw a ball back and forth. I recovered, but I remained deaf in 1 ear. The Taliban did not want me to make it to my 16th birthday, but I am still here. Now I travel to different continents, countries, and schools giving speeches and educating. When I was 17, I received the Nobel Peace Prize. I am the youngest person to win the Nobel Peace Prize. My favorite color is pink, and my favorite dessert is cupcakes. Can you guess who I am? Michael Fistel.
I have survived 4 tours in Iraq as a Navy SEAL. I was born in Odessa, Texas, April 8, 1974. I was a natural-born hunter like my father. My first gun was a Springfield rifle, then I got a shotgun. I was a good athlete. I played football and baseball. I loved horses and I was a professional bowler. But I suffered an injury that caused me not to be able to ride anymore. When I was healthy, I stumbled upon a Navy Recruit Center in the shopping mall. At first, I was rejected because I had pins in my arm, but they called me back to try out. There are many steps to training, including the BUDS program. This is the most challenging, and it was a way for the Navy to separate the weak from the strong. I completed the training and shortly after was deployed to SEAL Team 3. In the SEALs, my job was a sniper. I protected my friends from enemies that were trying to kill me and other Americans. In 2001, I met the love of my life and married shortly after and had 2 kids. In 2009, I retired from the SEALs and helped fund Fitco Cares, a nonprofit group that helps those struggling with PTSD. I mentored other veterans with war injuries. In 2012, I wrote American Sniper, which soon became a New York Times bestseller and became a movie in 2014. My life came to a tragic end on February 2nd, 2013, when me and a friend, Chad Littlefield, were shot dead outside of Fort Worth, Texas, by Eddie Ray Ruth, an ex-Marine who had a long history of PTSD. I was only 38 years old. Can you guess who I am?
Asher Contos.
When I was a child, I took apart my dad's computer and rebuilt it. I have one sister. I was born on February 24th, 1955. My family moved to the city of Asheville where I saw many kids working on electronics. I then started to do this myself. In high school, I met my best friend Steve Wozniak and we started to work on projects together. He was surprised one day when he was making a circuit board and I knew how it works. I built my first computer in my garage. I saw my first computer at age 12. I swam competitively when I was a child. My second computer released in 1977. I developed the world's first color computer. My rival company is Microsoft. I loved eating pistachio gelato. I died on October 5th, 2011. Can you guess who I am?
Brady Fonsky.
I didn't create chocolate. I made it one of the most popular treats in the United States. I was born on September 13th, 1857, and lived on a farm in Derry Church, Pennsylvania. My father was always changing jobs and couldn't pick one to stick with. My sister Sierra got very ill and died when I was 9 years old. My dad moved away because he was too sad. I was the only surviving child of my parents, Henry and Fanny. When I was 12, I dropped out of school because my family moved around way too much. I could only read and write like a 4th grader. When I was 15, I attended my first job at Royer's Ice Cream Parlor in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I started to learn how to make candy there, and I adored my job so much. 3 years later, I wanted to make my own candy shop, so I borrowed money from my uncle. Even though I was only 18, I opened my candy shop. Sadly, my shop failed. My father wanted me to move to Denver, Colorado to look for gold. I went when the gold ran out, so I got a job with a confectioner who taught me how to make caramels with fresh milk. I started my second shop, and it failed again. I moved back to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and had to go at making my own caramels. This company was a success. Everybody started to eat my caramels. In 1893, I saw amazing machines that made chocolate candy. I wanted to make my own chocolate candy too. 1 year later, I started my own chocolate company. This company did very well. I started to make fancy chocolates. Everybody loved this company and everybody had to have some of my chocolates. In 1909, I started a school for orphan boys. I wanted to help boys go to school and get a good education. Later, I married Catherine Sweeney when I was 40 years old.
She was only 25. I started to call her Kitty. Shortly after we got married, Kitty became very sick. She had a disease that got very bad over the years. Kitty died in 1915. After Kitty died, I donated my fortune to the school. When I was 88 years old, I started to have problems with my heart. I died in a hospital on October 13th, 1945. Can you guess who I am?
Natalie Washington.
How would you like to be the first woman ever to win 3 gold medals in one Olympic track and field games? I was born in Clarksville, Tennessee on June 23, 1940. I was youngest in the family with 19 older siblings. Whenever one of my siblings got sick, I did too. Just before I turned 5, I got sicker than ever. During the sickness, my left leg twisted inward and I couldn't move it back. The doctor came to see me and he said I had polio. He said when children got polio, they either died or were permanently crippled. There was no cure. The only way I could move around was to hop on one foot. I didn't give up. A couple days later, I went to a hospital that would treat people with dark skin. Doctors and nurses at the hospital helped me to learn the exercises to make my paralyzed legs stronger. At home, I practiced the exercises as much as I could, even though it hurt. The most hurtful part was that the local school wouldn't let me attend because I couldn't walk. I always had to watch my brothers and sisters at school. Suddenly, I couldn't take it. I had to fight back. I worked so hard with the exercises that the doctors decided that I would use a big steel brace. They said I was able to walk so I could finally attend school. One Sunday, on my way to church, I felt especially good. When I got there, I hung back until everyone found seats. Once everyone was seated, I took a deep breath and took off my heavy brace. Then, one step at a time, I started to walk down the aisle between the 2 sections of seats. Everyone gasped as I slowly walked without my brace. I stopped using my brace and I became an amazing basketball player. At one of my latest games, there was a coach from Tennessee State University, and he thought I could run incredibly fast. That's when he offered me a full scholarship to Tennessee State University to run track and field. The next thing you know, I am one of the best runners in Tennessee. 8 years after I stopped using my brace and all of my hard work, I made it to the 1960 Summer Olympic Games. I arrived in Rome, Italy to represent the United States as an Olympic runner. Boom, the race started and I beat everyone. I won the gold medals for the 100-meter dash, the 200-meter dash, and the 400-meter relay race. After the Olympics, my nickname was the Tornado, the fastest woman on earth. After retiring, I became a second-grade teacher and coached high school track. And I died on November 12, 1994, at age 54 from cancer. Can you guess who I am?
Kiara Edmonds.
When I was young, I broke 4 of my family's couches when I was jumping around. I was born on November 12, 1961 in Romania. I have a brother named Adrian. When I was young, I really liked gymnastics and dog collecting. While in preschool, Coach Kaoli found me doing cartwheels. I went to gymnastics class and showed Kaoli what I could do. Then he asked my parents if he could coach me, and they said yes. It took a lot of practice to go to my first junior national champions. I didn't do so well. I got 13th place, so my coach got me a doll to remind me to never get 13th place again. I was 14 when I got a perfect time at the Olympics in Montreal. I won a gold medal on the beam, bars, and all around. I also won a silver and a bronze medal at the same meet. A few years later, I was the first woman to do the Tuskahara in the Olympics and Moscow and land it and also get a 10. I had to go to a tough gymnastics camp with my team. All we did was eat, train, and sleep. I retired as a gymnast and moved to the United States. That's where I met Bart Connor and got married. We started our own gymnastics academy in Norman, Oklahoma. Can you guess who I am?
Hi, I'm Bianca. Now it's time to check your answers and see how many eminent people you guessed correctly. The host will introduce the students again as an eminent person.
Amanda Robinson as Sally Ride.
All adventures, especially into new territory, are scary.
Ashley Leone as Jane Goodall.
I like some animals more than some people. Some more people than some animals.
Sean O'Donnell as Wilbur Wright.
The desire to fly is an idea handed down to us by our ancestors who looked enviously on the bird soaring freely through space on the infinite highway of the air.
Lauren Locke as Princess Diana.
Only do what your heart tells you.
Preston Forjay as Shigeru Miyamoto.
Video games are bad for you? That's what they said about rock and roll.
Nora Lees as Annie Oakley.
I ain't afraid to love a man. I ain't afraid to shoot one either.
Riley Dolliver as J.K. Rowling.
It takes great courage to face your enemies, but even more to face your friends.
Thomas Ives as Orville Wright.
We only made the plane so we could make it better. Orville Wright.
Leah Harpster as Julie Crone.
With racing, you never rest on your laurels, and there are no counterfeits.
Bianca Fonseca as Rachel Carson.
The more clearly we can focus our attention on the wonders and realities of the universe around us, the less taste we shall have for destruction.
Natalie Howard as Malala Yousafzai.
One child, one teacher, one pen, and one book can change the world. Michael Thistle as Chris Kyle.
Every person I killed I believe was bad. When I face God, I have many things to account for, but killing them is not one of them.
Asher Comtois. Asher Comtois as Steve Jobs.
Things don't have to be important to change the world.
Brady Fonsby as Milton Hershey.
One is only happy in proportion as he makes others feel happy, and only useful as he contributes his influences for the finer callings in life.
Natalie Washington as Wilma Rudolph.
I love the feeling of freedom in running, the fresh air, the feeling that the only person I'm competing with is me.
Kiara Edmonds as Nadia Comaneci.
I don't run away
Instead, I run toward it because the only way to escape fear is to trample it beneath your feet. The students have made a project and food item. You can learn more about our eminent guests by visiting their tables, asking questions, and sampling their food items. Please enjoy the rest of the evening and thank you for coming.